Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about the tools that I've been using to build my own apps using AI and how that kind of relates to my outlook on WordPress, some words of advice, and how I approach using these tools to help you get started down your own path of building your own what I'll call mini apps, utility apps, building apps the way that you want to use it, in the face of competition. Here's two examples of two apps that I've built just as demonstration. So the first one I've talked about in another video, it's called Pulse, pulsewp.cc. I wanted an RSS reader that aggregated all of the WordPress news stuff that I pay attention to. So I built it using Replit, which we'll talk about in a moment. And it was just an RSS aggregator. I can bring all this content together. It automatically summarizes it for me and writes up some social media posts. It's just the way that I consume this news. I often have to read a lot. I want it summarized, and then I'll often share it out. So I built that utility for me. Same thing in the podcasting world. I created the podcast downloader the other day. This one was even easier, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But I wanted a podcast app that I could quickly search for podcasts and listen to them really quick, make this is the episode I want, and then download them because I do a lot of editorial around other podcast episodes in the WordPress world, in the podcast world, and I just needed something quick that I could download this, get this stuff into Descript, slice and dice it, share it, read through the transcript, etc. So I built these two little utility apps. And I think, as we all project, we're all trying to project where this world is going with AI and coding and what does this mean for WordPress? What does it mean for the web and technology? I think right now we're sitting in an interesting point where we can build these little utility apps that might not replace a WordPress or your favorite RSS reader or your favorite podcast listening app, but they are sort of these little utility apps that you can build and experience your way, that maybe your favorite to-do app doesn't do the things you want it to do, and maybe you can build it yourself. Okay, the 3-4 apps that I'm going to focus on, and this is all based on my 6-ish months of really becoming an AI coder, using that term very loosely, is ChatGPT, or you could replace it with Claude if you want, ChatGPT, Bolt, and Replit. I also dabble in some Cursor from time to time, which I thought was going to pop up, but didn't. Cursor for when I really want to get in the weeds with coding these particular apps. And what I'll share with you is the lessons I learned, getting this stuff going, where I failed, and where I found at least some success. So the first failure was when I started coding in ChatGPT and Claude. I was just quickly running out of tokens inside of these apps. I mean, I have paid accounts, but when you're churning through all this code and you're a newbie like me, you're just asking it to do everything for you. Continue to go back and rewrite this code, and it didn't work, try it again. And then you find yourself copying and pasting into other environments, right? So I was taking code from I was taking code from ChatGPT. I was putting it into a Cloudflare worker. I was trying to get this stuff to work. It was very painful. But the biggest roadblock was, of course, running out of those tokens, where at one point Claude was like, hey, come back tomorrow at 4:30 and you can continue to build this app because you're all out of tokens, which then found me finding these more hyper-focused environments like Bolt at Bolt.new and Replit at Replit.com. Now, we're going to break apart these and how I ended up on them, but I have to do this in sort of a working backwards model, okay? So I built PulseWP CC with Replit, and I built Podcast Downloader purely with Bolt. Now, I had started PulseWP with Bolt because that was the first app environment that I had found. But what I quickly realized are the limitations, not of Bolt necessarily, but of myself as an engineer, as a coder, and as an infrastructure person. What do I mean by that? So when you execute in Bolt, and you can see right here, we're going to talk about this little game that you can build. You can deploy this to something called Netlify, which will go and host your website. And that is going to host a React app, but then you're going to need a GitHub account. And your GitHub account is going to, of course, sync all your changes. It's great practice. It's what you should be doing. And that's what's going to help you deploy your code to Netlify. But when I started building Pulse, I needed a database. And Bolt at the time did not have this connect to Supabase integration. And what happened was I had to go and discover other backend platforms. Supabase is really great. Backend database, file storage, functions, and most importantly, user authentication and login systems. And it was fantastic. But I'm now operating in like 4 different environments. And when I was building something at the scale of Pulse, which had, I don't know, right now it's probably indexed about 700 articles since I've had this running. It's actually storing all the content in the database because I want to do some other things with it in the future. Just a lot of moving parts. And I was constantly, trying to build the app and having the failure points where it wasn't executing, wasn't building the features I needed. And then when I needed to upgrade things like the database or have it like make new tables and new security policies, doing it in an environment where I already don't know the code became way too clumsy, which is where I found success with Replit. Because Replit, for those of you in the WordPress world, and might not really take this this comparison, but it's like Elementor for AI building. And I mean that in the sense of it has everything inside of it. It has, of course, the AI agent, which is going to help you code this stuff. It's going to code in React and Python. It has the database inside of Replit using Postgres. It does user authentication. It does the hosting side of it. It does debugging. It has everything all in one to help you build this tool. I don't even need GitHub, though you can and should connect up to it. But it does everything in-house. You can preview it in your own little staging environment like you see up here on the screen. You can obviously click and host it, which is what I do with Pulse. So when I started building more complex apps, Replit is the winner for me right now. I think I think Bolt is getting better. Again, like when I started, it didn't have this Supabase integration. You simply click this, it'll spin up a Supabase instance and start helping you build out, logical database connections. And of course, it deploys automatic to Netlify. But then you still have to, connect all the dots and start maintaining this app with all of these services. Once you leave the Bolt experience and then go to something like Cursor and continue to sustain and build your app from that point, you're working in a bunch of different areas. And what I found with Podcast Downloader, building this in Bolt after failing a lot with Pulse and understanding, look, if I'm going to build an app that doesn't require a database and I can just ship it off to Netlify and slap a domain name on it, that's what I do with Podcast Downloader. It doesn't require a database, just searching the Apple API, showing me the results, I can play, and then I can download some cool meta information about the podcast. I'm off to the races. I don't need a database. I don't need a database yet. I don't think I'm going to use one, but who knows what the future holds. So when I'm building an app that's super simple, I think Bolt is the clear winner, especially if you're not going to get super complex with the database stuff. Granted, it does have the Supabase integration. Okay, that's a lot. I needed to work backwards to help you understand like how I got to that point, failed, and why I make my decisions with Bolt, or how I make my decisions with Bolt versus Replit. Bolt, amazing. Replit, amazing for their particular purposes. I also found, to give a nod to Bolt, that the UI experience in Bolt is a little bit better than Replit. I found that when I'm asking Bolt to design a user interface for something, it does a fantastic job, whereas Replit is kind of boring. Again, you look at Pulse and it's just like, whatever, it's just text on a page. It's nothing amazing. And I have prompted it to do things like, make it look better, improve the text, improve the readability, the spacing. Maybe my prompting has to get better with Replit. Maybe Replit needs to catch up. I've never fed it like screenshots to say, hey, like make it look like this page. But I've just found that out of the box, in the shortest amount of time, Bolt does a better job with the UI. So, take that for what it's worth. Okay, now I want to talk about a practical use case and kind of show you this stuff in action. So the biggest lesson, now that I've started to get a little bit more mature with these solutions, is I spend my time in ChatGPT doing all of the brainstorming, building the outline, and fleshing out the idea of my app in ChatGPT before I'm spending the time and, most importantly, the credits or tokens inside of Bolt and Replit. Because what will happen is you'll start to work on an idea inside of Bolt or Replit, and as we'll see in a moment, you start to, you have your idea. It's a short idea. You're putting it together like, hey, build me this thing, but you haven't thought of all the use cases. You haven't thought of all the edge cases. You haven't pushed the boundaries of using the app. And that's what makes something like Bolt really great, because it builds it really fast. It looks pretty good. And then you can kind of start playing with that idea. You start learning on the fly. You start asking it to do more things. Before you know it, that's when the wheels start to fall off. You start asking for so many other features. You start building features that you don't really like. You don't remove them. It starts adding all this slop code in the background. And sometimes these platforms will just forget what the heck it was that you were building. And oftentimes I've found that if I don't tell it to just like remove an idea or a feature that I had, it'll just kind of like leave it in memory. And I don't know, like 2 or 3 features down the road, it'll finish a feature that I asked for like 3 days ago. And I'm just like, what's happening with this stuff? So what I found, and the best piece of advice that I can give you, is to use ChatGPT or Claude and build out the idea and think about all the scenarios and ask the AI to help you think of those scenarios as well. And then at the end of it, say, hey, build me a prompt for this crazy idea that we just chatted about, so I can go and put it in another AI system, which is either Bolt or Replit. And this is what I've done here. I've quickly built out this prompt. Didn't spend a lot of time with it on purpose. To build a little vocabulary guessing game for my 7-year-old son. I have 3 boys, but my middle one, I've actually done this with. I have built a little app inside of Bolt to help him with his homework, help him with his, whatever. They're learning new vocabulary every week at school. He comes home, he's got to memorize the words and spell the words and use them in a sentence and everything like that. And they're still using pencils and paper. And I was like, hey, let me give you something a little bit more engaging. Let's build a little app together, right? Make it a little fun for him and engage with this little game. And that's what I chatted with ChatGPT with. I built out a little sample here. This is a little bit more extended in this one. I can give myself, assign my name, and then I can guess the words in this little guessing game. So it says, what's the word? Pleasant to the touch, not hard, jump, big, soft, or happy. And I can click on soft, and that'll give me the right word. And you can just kind of build these little apps on the fly. And I think when we think about the disruption in the world of software, particularly maybe even WordPress, is we can build these little in-the-moment apps to solve whatever it is that we're doing, which, a year ago, 2 years ago, was just either way too costly or just impossible in terms of time and effort. So as an example, let's take my prompt, and we can see this all happen in real time. And we will start a new conversation. And we'll just paste in this prompt that I already built in ChatGPT, having that conversation. And Bolt's going to go ahead and do its thing. I might cut to the end. I don't know how fast it's going to build this thing out, but it's going to start to code it and put together the app right in front of our eyes. We've already asked it to do a React app using Tailwind. Cool thing about Bolt is you see all the code right here in the browser. You can download your code. You can also sync your code to a GitHub repo, which I'm not going to do in this video, but it's really nice. It's a really nice environment. Okay, so you can see this time, just as an example of AI, it now calls it Word Wonder. It's a totally different name that Bolt came up with. If we go back to our other one, this one is called, it's gonna boot it up. Let's just take a moment to see it. It's called Word Wizard in the one that I had built before. So you start to see the differences in AI. Sometimes, you're building in one environment, it's giving you one result, and then a day later, it's giving you something totally different. I mean, this is the issue with AI stuff, right? So here we go. We have our Word Wonder app that we've built. I've already given it a list of words from our prompt from ChatGPT. It says having a high temperature, hot, soft, small, kind. So let's go hot. It says that's the right answer. Little in size, fast, brave, hot, or small. Let's click on brave just to get the wrong answer and see what happens. So it says brave. It showed a little, wrong outline on the word brave. Said try again next time, and it had green on the right answer. But in the moment, if I'm, teaching my son how to, learn these words and guess these words, I want to be able to pause for a moment. I want it to explain to him what the words are, what the correct word is, and why that happened. So let's just prompt Bolt to say, when the user gets the word wrong, have a continue button to click and explain why the selection was wrong and what the right answer is. Okay? So this is me just simply adding a feature. And when you're prompting this stuff, and when you're using Bolt for your very first time or Replit, what you're doing is you're starting to become not only a developer, but a UI specialist, a user experience specialist, a usability specialist, and you start to learn what it's like to build software, because now you're having those moments where, okay, now I'm the user, I'm using it. I had all those questions I asked ChatGPT, but now that I'm actually seeing the software, using the software, I'm going to start to ask for more features. And that's where a lot of this stuff can get really exciting, but then also fall off the rails, because you can start asking for so many more features. And what I found is to keep this stuff as simple and as straightforward as possible. So we made that change. Let's get this word wrong so we can see what it does. It says making people laugh. We know the word is funny, but let's go with cold. Click that. It's going to pause. It says, let's learn. The word cold isn't quite right. The correct answer is funny. Funny things make us laugh and feel amused. But now the game is paused. I can have this dialogue with my son. We can look at that example. We can clearly see what the right word was, and then we can click continue to continue the game. Now, we can continue to build features with this stuff, and when you start doing this, if you've never done it before, this is how you feel really powerful. It's how I feel really powerful, and it's what makes me feel like that same kind of energy like I had with WordPress so many years ago. To summarize this, because I want to end this video and I just wanted to touch on some of these areas that I have found success with and have found failures with, I think that what these tools are going to do for us is help us extend and augment the experience we can have with WordPress. We can continue to build our websites using AI and bringing that code into WordPress, whether that's a little snippet of code you ask ChatGPT to write, or if you go into another environment like Cursor and actually build out a full functioning plugin. I think there's a lot of opportunity here to build and extend with WordPress. In fact, you can start to build React apps that connect to WordPress APIs, REST APIs, Gravity Forms, start pulling in data, analyzing data, giving access to data. There's a whole other world that you can unlock, even using code that is not related to WordPress at all, but you can still use WordPress as that base, as that true content management system. Don't come at me for using that phrase. And then pull that data, extract that data out, and do some other really cool things with it with systems like this. So to sum up the three tools, ChatGPT I use for ideating and having a real conversation with somebody else in the room who's like a product specialist, really flesh out and build out those ideas. If I'm going to build something super lightweight and easy to use, I'm going to lean into Bolt as that experience for myself. If I'm going to build out something a little bit more robust, where I know I need user authentication, where I know I need a database connections, and I want to make sure that all of the risk is just brought into one platform, including hosting, I'm looking at Replit. That's how I've approached these tools. That's how I approach them today. This was a grab bag of information. I hope it was useful to you. If it is, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want more. Let me know what your comments are below. I want to continue to explore these areas because they're super popular right now, and it's definitely something that is facing WordPress to like, how is WordPress going to survive along this? I watched another video where somebody who focuses on AI a lot in all of these like coding apps, and they were talking about WordPress and just really beating it up, which I totally get. But in fact, the solution that they were building, WordPress was the best solution for. And maybe I'll go into that in another video, but that's what I have for you today. Thumbs up, subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.